It's happening again. We've seen some pretty rare things happen in the regular season this year, and here's another significant rarity before the playoffs even begin. I'm going to get to that and a lot more in this episode of Oilers Digest, but first, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Okay, for the third consecutive season, the Los Angeles Kings and the Edmonton Oilers will face off in round one of the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's an outcome that looked very much in jeopardy yesterday. Let's start with how it all happened. Going into the games yesterday, Vegas sat 1 point clear of Los Angeles for third in the Pacific Division, and hence were in a spot for a first-round matchup against the Edmonton Oilers. On the other hand, LA's position would have seen them face the Dallas Stars in the first round. Vegas hosted the Anaheim Ducks in their Game 82, while the Los Angeles Kings hosted the Chicago Blackhawks. With both Anaheim and Chicago more interested in the Macklin-Celebrini sweepstakes this season, it felt incredibly likely that both teams would win and remain in the same playoff positions, which of course would have been Vegas and Edmonton, Los Angeles and Dallas. First off, let's start with the game between the Kings and the Blackhawks because it was all over the place. LA fell behind early and then rallied to go up 3-1 through 2 periods, and then Chicago opened up the third period with 3 straight goals, all within the first 6.5 minutes to take a 4-3 lead. It looked like that might be enough for Chicago to win the game until late in the third, at which point Victor Arvidsson's power play goal tied things up and sent the game to overtime, and LA were clearly done messing around after the end of regulation. Adrian Kempe scored just 6 seconds into overtime to give the Kings the win over the Blackhawks. So, despite the many twists and turns along the way, Los Angeles themselves had done enough to move up in the standings, meaning they would hold the third spot in the Pacific if Vegas failed to get a result at home against the Anaheim Ducks. The Ducks had beaten the Knights in 2 straight games heading into this one, and Vegas would go down early in the second period thanks to a Frank Vatrano power play goal. Eichel scored on the power play himself to tie things up going into the third, but Jackson Lacombe would make it 2-1, followed by Frank Vatrano completing his hat-trick to win the game for Anaheim. Vegas's loss means they'll have the Western Conference leading Dallas Stars in the first round. Every single Stanley Cup champion since 2018 that aren't the Tampa Bay Lightning have lost in the first round the season after their Stanley Cup win. The Washington Capitals lost to Carolina in Game 7 after their 2018 win. St. Louis lost to Vancouver in the Edmonton bubble after their 2019 win. And of course, last season, Colorado lost in the first round against the Seattle Kraken. Vegas looks to be at risk of potentially continuing that trend. I personally think the Dallas Stars are the deepest team in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and going into the game starting tomorrow, they're currently my cup pick. So we've talked a lot about how we got here, but let's now take a look at where we indeed are. So, as I said, for the third consecutive season, Los Angeles and Edmonton have a first-round date. When I made the comment off the top of the video about rarity, I was referring to the two teams playing in 3 straight round ones. That doesn't happen often, and it's actually only happened 4 times since the 2004-2005 NHL lockout. Washington and Pittsburgh faced off in the second round for 3 straight seasons between 2016 and 2018. The Minnesota Wild and Chicago Blackhawks played thrice between 2013 and 2015. Washington and the Rangers had 3 straight between 2011 and 2013. And finally, Vancouver and Chicago played in each season between 2009 and 2011. You can now add the Kings and the Oilers to that list. The two teams met 4 times this season, with the Oilers winning the season series 3-1, most recently beating Los Angeles 4-1 on home ice back in the end of March. Los Angeles have had a pretty all-over-the-place season. At times, they looked like a team destined for a deep playoff run, and at times, they looked like a team that didn't look like they'd make the playoffs at all. The team does do a good job at blending experienced veterans like Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty with younger pieces like Quinton Byfield and Adrian Kempe, both Byfield and Kempe having career years in the points category. Looking around the rest of the LA Kings roster, Pierre-Luc Dubois' first season with the LA Kings came in well below expectations, especially when you take into account how good Gabe Vilardi played with the Winnipeg Jets. The goaltending duo of Cam Talbot and David Rittich is probably going to be the most scrutinized part of this Kings team and probably going to be the part of LA that raises the most question marks, but they each turned out a very solid season. Talbot posted a .915 save percentage. That was a number that landed him 10th in the league among all goaltenders who played 25 or more games. Rittich's numbers were even better than Talbot's in a smaller sample size. And Cam Talbot getting the nod to start against his former team is just another compelling storyline to watch heading into these playoffs. The 36-year-old, of course, backstopped Edmonton to the second round back in 2017. The Oilers are the betting favorites for this series, and from an objective standpoint, probably do have the upper hand, but don't discount the part history will play in the series. When I talked earlier about the 4 previous playoff matchups that had seen one another in 3 straight years, what I didn't mention at the time is that only one team managed to win all 3 matchups, the Chicago Blackhawks over the Minnesota Wild. There is no questioning anybody's motivation in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but don't discount the impact back-to-back first-round losses at Edmonton's hands will have for the Los Angeles Kings, who will be for sure looking to avenge the previous 2 losses. Game 1 will go Sunday at Rogers Place. The end of the regular season for the Oilers was always destined to have more of a focus on staying healthy than winning hockey games, with Edmonton's position in the standings solidified by the time Tuesday ended. Wednesday night was the final game for the Arizona Coyotes at Mullet Arena, with the team's move to Salt Lake City already confirmed, and the Coyotes put a show on for their fans. Liam O'Brien, Matthias Maccelli, Lawson Krause, Dylan Gunther, and Sean Durzi all scored in the 5-2 win. Calvin Pickard would make 19 saves on 23 shots in his final start of the regular season for the Oilers, with the best part of the game probably being Warren Foegele hitting the 20-goal plateau for the first time in his career. The 20 goals and 21 assists gives Foegele the best season of his career statistically, and Foegele joins Evan Bouchard, Matthias Ekholm, and Ryan McLeod off this season's Oilers roster to all reach new career highs in points. Edmonton's game against Colorado on Thursday took the let's get rested for the playoffs idea and kind of ran with it. For instance, here are the Oilers' forward lines for Thursday night. Okay, and here are the defense pairings. And all the way down here, you will have the players who were kept out as a healthy scratch. Combining the points totals of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins alone would be a higher number than if you combined the points total of every single other Oiler who dressed last night. Colorado would take advantage of that. Goals from Mikko Rantanen, Josh Manson, and a pair from Valeri Nichushkin in the first period saw to it that Stuart Skinner's game didn't last longer than 20 minutes, with Pickard finishing the game off and Colorado finishing the game off by winning 5-1. Now, losses in 4 of the final 5 regular season games isn't how any team wants to go into the playoffs, but taking into account that the last 2 games of the season were meaningless when it comes to the position in the standings, the results probably shouldn't be read too much into. Evan Bouchard did manage to bounce back after last Saturday's loss to the Canucks with a goal and 3 points in his last 2 games, giving Bouchard 82 points and giving Bouchard the most productive season by any Edmonton Oilers defenseman in history not named Paul Coffey. The Rogers Center and the Ice District is going to be pumping this weekend. Of course, as I said, Rogers Place on Sunday will be Game 1 between the Oilers and the Kings. Thanks for watching today's Oilers Digest.